Today is February 22nd. It is about 5 minutes after 7. We'll call to order this meeting of the Town of Brattleboro Development Review Board. The review board, the DRB starts every meeting with a spiel, and I know that I think you've heard it before at least 5 times probably. I'll try to speed it up a little bit tonight because you're our only applicant and you know the deal, but because we're creating a record, I do like to go through it. At the DRB, we hear applications for land development in the town of Brattleboro and appeals of zoning administrative decisions. Procedurally, we operate on the record, which means that we take a record of testimony from the applicant and any interested parties and then issue a written decision with our findings. Applicants and members of the public should be aware that as we are on the record, this is your opportunity and your only opportunity to comment on and provide evidence relating to an application. If our decision is appealed to the environmental court, that court will not take additional testimony or evidence at its hearing, but will look at the evidence from this hearing, the regulations or the applicable law, and determine if the evidence here supports our decision. Only interested people that participate in this proceeding can appeal a decision made by the board, so I strongly encourage anybody who wants to speak up at the hearing. Because we're on the record, we ask that if anybody thinks there's even a slight possibility that they may speak on the record, that you do so under oath. So I know you folks are going to speak. If you would raise your right hand, and anybody in the public who thinks they might speak, don't think so? Okay. So, gentlemen, do you hereby swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in the cause under consideration will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
I do.
Okay, thank you. If you change your mind, I can swear you in at a later time, but if I don't swear you in, it's not testimony, and it doesn't become part of the record. Applicants require a majority vote of the full board to succeed. That means you need a minimum of 4 votes because we are generally a 7-person board. As you can see, we have 5 people here tonight, and what we do in situations such as these is you can ask to have our alternates watch this hearing. Do we only have 1 alternate at the moment?
Mayo will watch the video, and Michael has a conflict.
Okay. So our maximum, if we were to do that, is 6, which means you need 4 votes out of 6. We do not have an additional board member who's been appointed right now, and because our 7th person has a conflict, we don't have a pinch hitter, if you will. Mm-hmm. We are always looking for replacement board members. We've tripled our rate of pay, but nobody's applying. So we'll try to be as fair as we can, and what we have done in situations such as these where we only have 5 is we'll give you guys what we euphemistically call a weather report, which is to say we'll let you know what the 5 people are thinking. It's not a big secret. And if you feel like you want to wait to see if if that extra vote matters, you can wait, and if it doesn't matter, then we'll just go forward with the 5. And we're sorry, we're supposed to have a board of 7 with 2 alternates. The problem is if nobody volunteers, we don't have that. And by the way, anybody who's out there listening, if you're interested in land development, please consider seeking appointment to the Development Review Board. After we take our testimony and hear evidence, we close the public hearing and we may vote on your application. The board will issue a written decision within 45 days of the close of the hearing. While we may vote on an application, it's the written decision that controls the timeline for any appeal. The town of Brattleboro is a party with an interest in land development applications. The town has no special status before this board. Documents provided to the board by the town planning department, the town attorney, or any other member of the town departments are considered the same way as information from the applicant or any interested parties. Mr. Bannon, has our meeting been properly warned?
Yes, it has.
Could we please disclose any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications? Nobody? Okay. My firm at one time employed somebody who had a relationship with the Housing Trust, but they no longer work there, and I don't view it as a conflict. The first order of business is to review the minutes from our meeting of January 18th, 2017. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes? So moved by Mr. Annis, second. Any discussion of the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. We have only one case on for public hearing tonight. That is docket, number 2017-9. Sorry, sometimes I think I'm in court. Docket number 2017-9. Peter Paggi, I'm sorry, I always feel like I'm doing this wrong. Paggi?
Paggi.
Paggi, every time. One of these days, my first try will be right. Peter Paggi of Windham Windsor Housing Trust for Mike LaCroix and Security Pacific Holding Corp. Can you tell us about your project, please?
Well, yeah, I'll start off. So the Windham and Windsor Housing Trust is proposing to redevelop the Lamplighter Inn as 22 permanent apartments with a new construction community building. The community building will house a common living space for tenants, office space for supportive services for the tenants. There will also be a laundry room in there. The apartments will be 22 what we're calling micro apartments. They're about 350 square feet, but they will be permanent housing. It will no longer be a motel. And I think Brud can take over on the site design.
No problem. So we're here for site plan review.
Can you just introduce
Oh
yourself?
yes, I'm
for
sorry.
the record?
Brud
It's all right.
Sanderson, Stevens and Associates, a civil engineer. We're here for site plan review on the project, Act 250 review. This property currently has an Act 250 permit from the past, so therefore any development that occurs or redevelopment that occurs needs to always go through Act 250 again. So that's the reason we're here for the Act 250 portion of this. And I think before I start describing the project, I want to let you know that we're proposing some small changes to the site and landscaping that aren't major, but I'd like to hand out 11 by 17s that show those so that you can look at those instead of the one that...
Will this replace C3?
It would replace C3 and C4. And it would also replace the landscaping and screening section of narrative. I'll do this in here.
Once you've passed this out, can you, so we don't have to look at it and figure it out, give us the quick version of what's different?
I think the more important one is C3, which describes the landscaping and the driveway grading.
Sure, thank you. So I'm just going to note for the record, the new C3 and C4 are also marked C3 and C4. They're just updated versions. Oh, you already gave me that. Sorry.
And the date on this one is 2/21/2017. So the brief overview is, maybe I can show this. Let's see if this works. There we go. So we didn't render the upper one, but this is the older one that's up here, and this is the one that we're proposing. So the changes, starting with the front, are that there's a bus stop located at the entrance, and we actually brought it down near, it's in the state, we're proposing it in the state right of way instead of up on the property. The idea that it would be better usable down there, but And we're also looking to narrow up the throat of the driveway. Currently, it's about 40 feet wide, and we're turning it down to 24. Feel we still have emergency vehicle access to get in there to do that, and it's better from a curb cut perspective. Then, from sticking with the hardscape point of view, we made basically slight alignments to this sidewalk here, alignments to this sidewalk here, and we eliminated a sidewalk and roof on this building and pulled it closer. And we made some slight adjustments to the sidewalk here by pulling this away from I think it's 150, I can't remember the name, this particular building B. And then we made some adjustments to the patio out back, which is actually a pervious paver patio. So from a landscaping perspective, we had on this upper one a lot of low bush, sort of high maintenance landscaping up against the buildings. And after further review, we decided to go to a more mature, larger tree specimens in the courtyard, which still meet the requirements of the landscaping section of the zoning permit. But the big deal is that it requires less maintenance, and it'll end up filling in that area a little better. But those are the major changes. There really aren't a lot of other things that are going on there. So the scale of the project, didn't really change. So let me hide this one, if you don't mind. I'm confused. And I'll walk through what we're proposing. So if everybody knows where these are both Lamplighter in buildings. The Panda North is to the west, and they all three share one access, and they will continue to share one access. What we have is each building has a large parking lot in front of it, and what we're trying to do is reduce the amount of parking out there, hardscape basically, and by putting enough parking on this side and parking here in front of the proposed community building, and again making this more of a pedestrian friendly area up front. The buildings, actually, probably should note that there's going to be an addition. So this building that's near Panda is actually building A. It currently has 14 motel units in it. It's going to get reduced to 9 residential units in order to get enough space for an apartment. And we had to lose a couple spaces, but they are currently motel units, and they'll be going to residential. As we come through the courtyard, we're proposing a community building that would be essentially space that is used for the residents. I guess from a description point of view, it's also it's counseling, it's supportive services, it's for the tenants and things like that. If you
the program for the overall project is permanent supportive housing for formerly homeless populations. So we will be partnering with support agencies in town to provide on-site supportive services. So there's office space in the community building and a conference room for those
So it'd be
services.
sort of like a rotating.
Well, we have memorandums of understanding with 2 agencies, Groundworks and HCRS, and they will be on site for a certain amount of hours per week for the 2 of them. So it's not necessarily rotating. We do have 2 specific organizations we're working with.
Is the community building just for those things, or are you going to have like a pool table and a community space in there too?
There's a community living room with we'll have a computer station, a full kitchen. Each unit is going to have obviously their own kitchens, but they'll be small. So we'll have a full kitchen in there, a full oven if everyone wants to do any baking, and a room for parties, or if the tenants want to get together.
So it's sort of like an indoor common area at a condominium site.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And then also laundry facilities and what you would expect to find in an apartment. So.
But basically, all the uses being accessory to the residences.
Correct.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. Building B, which is this one, it currently has 10 units, and we're going to be creating an addition on the back that extends towards 91, and the total will be 13 units when we're all said and done. From the excuse me.
Can I ask a quick question
You
about
can.
the first side of it?
Yep.
Do I correctly understand you're essentially reversing those?
That is, yes, I hadn't got there yet, but you're
Oh.
exactly right.
Okay.
So what happened is on the Panda side, excuse me, all the entries face Panda
Right.
North, Panda to the west. And what we're gonna do is close that off, and we're gonna face each other, so they're actually oriented towards the common space
Right.
and towards each other.
Okay.
And then that back sidewalk will have new entrances coming in. These are little roof overhangs. I don't believe that they're enclosed, they're just overhangs.
Mhm.
But that's exactly correct.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you.
Nope, that's fine. Feel free. On building B, that isn't gonna be, they will maintain the same entrances,
Right.
same orientation rather. And what we're proposing is to try to create a loop sidewalk so everybody's connected. But because there is no parking in front of this building, and we're not proposing to have any, we have a sidewalk that is much wider than we'd anticipated. The idea was we were trying to create fire truck access so that they could get up there and fight a fire if they needed. Having said that, we are proposing to sprinkler the two housing buildings, but not the accessory building. What else do we want to offer here? So we have bike racks, because we're anticipating, sort of speak to the parking, we reduced the parking significantly on the site because typically the population that the housing trust serves don't have a requirement or a need for parking. So we don't have one space for every unit. But what we do have is, I mean, if we need to down the line, we could extend parking in front of this building and towards the north and still pick up those spaces in the future if it ever became an issue. Historically, that hasn't been the case.
Yeah.
And so we just are trying to create more green space, less hardscape, because it didn't make sense to build it necessarily now.
And to expand on that, half of the units in this project will be for homeless populations. So we worked with our property management on historically what they would think is, a good amount of parking for maintenance, for tenants, and then we added in a few for the supportive services. And so we had this number based on what we wanted for hardscape, but also it matched what they would expect for the population that we're planning on serving.
Somewhat dependent on the bus continuing to run.
Yes, that's why we're building the shelter out there, and we're working with the current
Okay.
on bus
But you
service.
feel fairly confident that that's just going to be a stable route going forward?
Yes, so there's a route already going by. It stops at CNS and then also at the exit 3 park and ride. And so on existing lines, they'll stop. There's a fairly wide shoulder there, and we also have the entrance where they can pull off the road. So we feel confident that for the existing service that it's a solid line, and we're also planning to work with the current on expanding weekend service.
You want to talk about this wall?
Yeah, that's where I was going next, actually. So, because there's some HUD funding in this project, there's a regulation that speaks to how far away propane tanks that are above ground can be from the buildings that they help fund. And on the adjacent hotel lot, there's 4,000 gallon tanks, I believe. Or
There's
2,000?
four 1,000 gallon
1,000
tanks.
gallon
Yep.
tanks here.
And those are marked as the...
That's right here, yep. And when you look at the HUD regulations in the event that they catch fire and explode, you have to provide some sort of protection to the building that's, which would be the Lamplighter, the Great River Terrace building, to protect it from a blast. And what we have, based on the design, because these are elevated above the existing building, this is probably 3 to 4 feet above, we need to have a wall that's approximately 15 feet tall and fairly long to make that happen. We understand that that's a variance requirement, but we're also working with the abutter to try to solve that, and that actually solving could be burying those tanks, and we're trying to negotiate with them to get that done instead of putting a wall in. And do you want to speak a little bit more about that?
Well, I had some conversations with the owner, and they said they're willing to work with us, and they were interested in the project and want to see it happen and understand the issue. So there's the wall, and as Brud said, there's a few options. There's the wall, but then there's also burying the tanks. So there's going to be a little bit of back and forth between us and the owners, but. So right now we don't have anything firm, but it would be our preference to bury the tanks. It's certainly financially it seems to be the cleanest solution, and I think aesthetically it's the cleanest solution.
And then them moving the tanks is not an option.
Well, we haven't really discussed that. Right now they're in a pretty good area for the hotel. I don't know if they would be open for that. It seems like they're in the most convenient spot for them. To move the tanks, they would have to be about 250 feet away from the buildings. So they would have to be moved significantly.
If the tanks are not buried, is there anything you can do to mitigate the visual impact of the concrete wall?
First, I think the building itself will provide some mitigation. And as far as the screening, I mean, the bigger impact would probably be from Putney Road. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I have this building would actually provide quite a bit of screen for that on its own. Mm-hmm. And I also think that this slope, which is, I don't have it right in front of me, it's approximately, at the property line here, it's probably 6 or 7 feet between Putney Road and this building. So I think, and then we're gonna actually be landscaping it with an evergreen hedge along the street. I think we'll have it covered. But I don't think we would be opposed to some amount of screening through there. I mean, it could be a creeping, like a vine or something on that.
That's what I was
be a
going to
big
ask
deal.
about.
But
is this one of these situations where if you let a vine grow up, it's going to eat it away?
I don't think it would actually. No.
Okay. And that would not be the most onerous thing if you had to do that.
I don't think so.
I mean, I can't get rid of those.
No, I don't think it would be an issue. But
I don't want to. Just a quick question.
Yeah.
Which is building A and which is building B?
A and B.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, no problem.
The length of the wall, not the height, but the length, why is it so much further, I guess it would be to the east of the propane tanks?
So if you look at a blast zone, and this has to extend enough towards the interstate so that it would actually shoot past the back end. And as Peter was saying, about 250 feet is what you need to say that there's no impact. I think it was 1 psi of pressure increase or something like that. If there's a blast that occurs and there's more than a psi of pressure increase from the blast, then you have to have a wall.
And this is the minimum length you were able to do based on that formula?
Right. And if what we're trying to do is draw a line between where that wall would protect this back corner.
How long is it? About 170 feet?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. Let me check. You guys know. And I didn't bring a scale with me. Yeah, it is about that long though. It's fairly long.
In the general ballpark?
Yeah, I would agree with you there. Yeah.
Okay. And the height is likewise a function of the formula you
That's
applied
correct.
based on the pressure from an explosion? Okay. Can we talk about the row of 13 spaces without the break?
Yep. So what we were looking at, we didn't provide a break there because we were anticipating that was existing parking. We really haven't. We've reduced the amount of parking. It's probably, I think it's 20-something spaces there now without a break, and we've reduced it down to 13. So we looked at it as a pre-existing condition.
Is your reduction of it down to 13 actually shortening the paved portion? Or is it just restriping?
We can look at the existing conditions plan right here. So right now, it's paved all the way out to near the 91 property line. And it goes this full length, and there's no island here, which we added an island. And we added islands here to demarcate the the Pandas parking lot and
Yeah.
try to make that a little cleaner as well. So that we were looking at it as, yes, it is more than 10 spaces, but it was an existing condition that we're improving on considerably.
Brian, is Long Road defined in the ordinance?
No, just there's a break after 10 spaces, but
But there was a note here that we could find that it's not a long row. Are we just using common sense to decide what is and what isn't?
I think the board might find that the idea is to break up parking into smaller units, but this is already a small parking lot, so that it's not in fact a long row.
I mean, if there was a break, it would mean that likely you would just move the pavement west.
What
one
would
spot
happen,
towards
yeah,
the
you
right.
basically extend it, you extend the entire parking, including the dumpster north
Mhm.
probably. And then somewhere in between, it would be probably a row of 5 and a row of 6, and there would be a small island in there.
Right. And are you reasonably confident that the fire truck can handle the area where the fire department wants to have access there?
I'm confident that they can get in there. There was something about, I didn't quite understand the request about the landscaping. You had a discussion about that.
I
And-
took it to be that they wanted the pavers underneath the grass, you know, those things that's sort of like a cutout.
Oh, is that, because this is a 10-foot sidewalk, which is,
Well, I'm not telling you, that was just the way
that was
I
your
read it.
understanding? Yeah.
Because we've done that at a couple of other, for a couple of other site plans, but I don't know, Brian, do you think I'm misinterpreting?
I think they should consult with Lenny and find out exactly what he meant by that.
Okay.
Yeah, I felt like I think we've met with them and reviewed it.
What did they say?
I felt like they were okay with this 10-foot. What I thought it was related to the trees, the landscaping part was what
So-
I was wondering about. And if there's an issue, I don't mind meeting with them again. I mean, we have the trees here, which I'd prefer, but if it's the tree that's the concern, we could easily put that on the other side of the sidewalk and it would be out of the way. It provides shade to the building and shade to the sidewalk at the same time.
Sure, I understand. And those are maples, right?
They are.
No, I mean, we can always just have a condition that the fire department approve it.
And I'm fine with that.
We go through this almost every time. You have to have an electric vehicle charger. I'm aware that it's
Yep.
onerous.
Yep, no, we need to have one for an Act 250 permit as well, so it's not just the town of Brattleboro. I would anticipate that we'd put one out here on a light.
Okay. You wouldn't change the parking arrangement, though?
I'd like not to, but if you wanted us to, we could.
No, I'm not suggesting that. I mean, putting in a charger is not going to change anything.
Oh, no,
As we
because
see
we would
it.
actually use a light pole that exists.
Okay. Which one would it be, just out of
I'd
curiosity?
use this one right here in front of the community building.
And that wouldn't impair the handicapped?
No, because it's actually to the side of the handicapped,
Okay.
and if need be, the handicapped unit could use it as well.
So, one of the things is if you change the landscaping for the fire, you arguably would have to come before us, but we can allow administrative approval for future modifications. Any problem with that?
I don't have any problem.
Are you going to use for the lighting warm white LEDs?
We can. It looks like we didn't have that in there. I didn't really. We have a specification, but we can make sure that it's white. I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. I mean, it has to be for that. And the sidewalk is going to be built according to the town standard along the front?
That's the one thing that we are actually requesting a waiver on. It's, if you look at the side road here, they have a very deep shoulder on Route 5, and then there's not really a paved shoulder, and there's not really much of a grass shoulder to build a new sidewalk on before you're actually filling in the ditch line along the edge.
Mm-hmm.
We see the benefit of it, and we just have trouble dealing with that ditch line and the drainage associated with that. There's a recommendation to retouch base with V-Trans and see if they have an issue with it. But
Is the ditch line indicated on C3?
it's on C1 actually. It's not on, it's or C4 as well. It's not called out. It's the contours that you can see.
Oh, okay. So, if you had to do it, is there a way to regrade that? Or does V-Trans do that? How would that work?
We would have to do it, and we'd have to get it approved by V-Trans.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd have to, what it's not clear to me is how much excavation would have to take place, whether we'd have to, if we wanted to put a 5-foot sidewalk in, could we take it out of the shoulder, which I think is unlikely, or would we have to fill in the ditch and cut back the entire slope another 5 feet to make that happen? And I'm not sure where that would fall. I don't know. I can't really predict what they would want us to do there.
Brian, what's our authority to waive the sidewalk? I can't remember.
I think it's required.
We've gone through this with other parcels
I
on
bet.
Putney Road because a lot of them have similar situations.
Right.
I mean, a sidewalk was just not envisioned when they did the last sort of slapdash improvement of Putney Road. I don't think we can, though. Waive it, I mean. Can you talk about the building height
Yep.
of the,
24
do you have sort of a
versus
name for the community building? Is community building just?
Yeah, we're just calling it a community building. Yeah,
Okay.
I guess we would look at that as an accessory use to the site.
Mhm.
And as an accessory use to the site, I don't believe that there is a height requirement associated with that. The
You
primary
could,
use is that.
you could have this whole project without the community building.
That's right.
It's just there to enhance the living standards for the folks that are gonna live there.
That's right.
So that's all the questions I had. I'd like to hear from Brian on the issue of the sidewalks, but while he's looking, can everybody else air their questions?
Oh, I'm just thinking about that wall.
I have a question about the unit sizes. Now, on side A, you're cutting down 14 units to 9. And building B, you are adding 13.
Adding 3.
Huh?
They're adding 3.
Adding 3, okay. But you said that the square footage was 350?
Yes, that's correct.
Is that going to change on number A since it has less units?
No, so the existing units right now in Building A are about 195 square feet, and then the existing units in Building B are right around 350.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're expanding the units in Building A and keeping the same footprint in Building B.
Okay. I'm not familiar with the Lamplighter. Is it a ground level entrance?
Yes.
So it's not upper floor? I mean, you're not...
No, it's
so
single story.
It's accessible for
Yes.
handicap?
Yep. Mm-hmm. And then we have 2 actually fully accessible units, but they're all fully accessible, meeting ADA standards. But as far as the entrances, yes, they're all
Okay.
And they're all visitable as well.
right.
Okay.
And you're gonna have knock boxes on both buildings?
We'd have for the community building, the knockbox. You wouldn't have. I don't think you would have one for the residential spaces.
Just on the
Yeah.
community building?
What's across the street, highway?
There's another Lamplighter unit
Annex.
across. the
Yeah, it's
annex.
the third parcel is the annex, yes.
And the
Okay, 'cause
landfill
I
that's
was-
not a landfill, you remember that
Yeah,
application?
the landfill's not a landfill.
That
Okay.
application was behind the annex, which is across from this.
So would there be any foot traffic, people crossing from one to the other?
Well, we're not buying that side of the road. that parcel that's remaining under the ownership of the current owner, and they'll be assumingly operating it as a motel. So the two projects will be not connected,
Okay.
but there, I suppose, if somebody wants to visit somebody over on the other side, they could. But
And there's no crosswalk now, right?
there's no crosswalk now.
No. You have to run fast.
Although those have been used functionally as a single parcel, one big motel.
Essentially, these three, they've been operating the same way.
Right.
And they, even though they are motels, they are almost operating as apartments to some extent.
And looking at fire department review, they say install knock boxes on each building. Is that something you can work out with the fire department?
I can. I'm not sure what, they're individual, it's almost, they're individual apartments. So it's sort of interesting that, but yes, we can talk to them about that.
Well, I mean, if we just have a condition in there that the fire department approves of it, they can work that out.
Yep.
Brian, do you have a satisfactory answer on the sidewalk issue?
So they are required, but if it turns out to just be basically physically impossible, the public works director can waive it.
Mhm.
So I think it should be so conditioned.
Okay. To bring the community center down to 19 feet would change the design of that building enormously, correct?
I mean, up to 24?
Sorry,
Yeah.
pardon me.
It would, I mean, it would change it in such a way that it would sort of, it'd be taller than the other buildings around it. It would create more construction costs and operational costs, unfortunately, for the building. And yeah, it's actually, from a design perspective, fairly far along. I'm not sure if it would help I don't think it would help our program really to do that.
No, yeah, we would have no need for extra height.
I have no other questions. I don't know if you folks do. So, I don't know if you folks want to have a deliberative session or not, but we've got two issues here. One is that in order to approve the community building at its height as designed, we have to make a finding that that's an accessory structure. And I don't know if you all agree if it is or it isn't, but that's one issue of discussion. And the other is this wall, which would require a variance.
Yeah.
And my initial take on the issue is the community building is pretty obviously an accessory use to me. And if we were at the condition making it so that the concrete wall is a last resort only if the tanks can't be buried and if they landscape it with a ivy or vine, it seems to me that this could be the rare situation where a variance is appropriate. But I don't know if you folks disagree with me or think I've lost my marbles or what.
It would have to be
Or you
warned.
do.
Yeah, exactly. No, it would have to be warned as a separate meeting, but I
Right.
agree that it is actually plausible.
Right. Do they have to file a separate application or can we just warn it?
We'll just rewarn it under the
Okay.
same application if it's necessary.
This is just a requirement of the statute authorizing variances.
Hmm.
I mean, if anybody thinks there are any other issues, let's talk about them, but those seem to me to be the two big ones.
I'd like to see a sidewalk myself, if you have mostly people walking.
I don't think we can waive it.
Yeah.
I don't think we can waive it. I mean,
Well,
we
that's
can
kind
we can indicate in there that if DPW waives it, they may waive it. We have that ability,
Yeah.
but I don't think we have the power not to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
I guess the only question I had is, could you put the EV charger on some other trust property and still conform to Act 250?
That's a good question. I've never done that before, so I don't know that that's a possibility. It would, I'd have to touch base with Stephanie Giles at Act 250 and see what their take is on that. Your point is that basically there's probably another property like their offices that would be more likely to be used.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely employee charging is one goal, and multifamily is also, but this might not be the best multifamily
Right.
property for that.
Might it be possible for the sidewalk to come into the parcel, lead to the striped walk, and sort of return out to its prior position in the right-of-way?
The answer, yeah, we actually were proposing the striped walk, and we show it on there. I think we could make our way down, but sorry about that.
That's all right.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you come up this walk and across and back down, that's a possibility.
Mhm.
It gets back to functionality.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I think that ball is in DPW's court. I don't think
Yeah.
we can just say,
Yeah, I hear you.
do what you want.
Ideally, I would have, if it wasn't for the height of the land above the road, we would have been putting something right along the property line right there and made
Sure.
it useful, which is what's happened down the road where there was opportunities. I believe that
Down the Chrysler
they went on
dealership.
on the property line side of the right of way and
Right.
put in a walk.
So if we had that condition, number one, about the fire department, can we also do the same thing with the DPW? That if they say can't put a sidewalk there, it's okay with us. If you don't, then where does it go with us?
We have two options. We can say you have to put the sidewalk there no matter what, or we can say you have to put the sidewalk there no matter what unless DPW gives you a waiver, in which case.
So, I see. But either way, they'd have to, we would still be going against the ordinance, so if we told them okay, right? I mean, we would be putting a sidewalk where there can't be a sidewalk.
We don't have the authority to just say,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So if DPW wasn't to say okay, it could be brought around and into the existing, or where they planned the sidewalk, the
Well, I think
striped walk.
what they're proposing diverges from the town standard in a sense because it would be striped on pavement for a period, and DPW could approve that.
I see.
DPW could make them turn what is now a 4-foot striped walk into a 4-foot concrete kind of like end cap
Mhm.
that would, what is it, 6 inches deep concrete?
Yeah, 4 to 6
5,
depending. Yeah.
But they have their own little engineering standard for sidewalks that they use. But as it's proposed, it's a little bit different. They're not saying no sidewalk, they're saying different sidewalk right now. We don't have the authority to say that's
Oh,
waived.
I see, okay.
We can waive the standard DPW requirements, but DPW could. Or DPW could say, you put it where you want, but it has to be 4 feet wide,
Okay.
5 inches deep, whatever.
I mean, there's an opportunity to put the sidewalk down by the property line. It has no additional value than where it is right now. I mean,
Right.
obviously, we know where the best location is in the right of way itself, but it's getting the state of Vermont to agree.
I think we're sympathetic to your sidewalk plight. We just,
Yeah.
sometimes we can't.
Yep.
sometimes we
Could you
can't
cut it
do-
into the bank and put a retaining wall on it? Or?
Again, you still have to go through and get the
Yeah.
approval from the state.
Sure.
And the answer is maybe if they approve it.
Then it's actually the planning department's stance that putting that striped walkway above just has no value, so it would be better to do nothing than force them to do something that just won't be useful to people.
Right. Right. I mean, the only people who can have some power here is DPW. DPW probably knows what's best more than us anyway. So, I think the only thing worth talking about is if we feel we should say you have to do the sidewalk this way, whether DPW waives it or not. If we agree that that's not something we want to make a condition of the site plan, then I think the discussion's over. We'll say, if DPW waives it, God bless you.
Yeah.
How about the concrete wall? I mean, I can't see any alternative.
Mr.
I don't think
Gorbachev,
we-
take down this wall.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right.
Move those tanks.
Yeah, as far as our funding is concerned, it's burying the tanks or building the wall.
Oh, no, we understand.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I understand totally. I'm just
Right.
like,
Blast walls are a new one for this board.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah.
it's gonna look like a turd any way you look at it, and
Yeah.
it's just
What are you
like,
gonna do?
I'm
Do you-
curious, is it possible to taper on the ends or do something to give it a little shapeliness, or?
Oh,
You're right
you
on
mean, just taper it down at the top?
there's no way to berm it even.
I don't know.
Yeah, we thought about berming it as well, you know, and I mean,
You just
it's
don't have the space
no,
to do it.
not
You could
really,
grow
because
ivy in
if
it.
you use soil instead of the wall, that would have worked. And you actually could have probably, if you had enough room to put enough soil in, you could get the wall down to an 8-foot wall.
Yeah.
The top would have still been the same. And actually, probably from the streetscape, it would look the same because you've got the building in front of it.
And how tall is the building? 12 feet or something?
I don't know, you know, actually, do you know?
It's
I
here.
gotta swear you in if you're gonna say it. Do you want me to just swear you in? You
Yeah,
can say
go
it.
ahead.
Tell the building is, you hereby swear from the testimony you're about to give in the cause to consideration will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pain and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Can you come up to the microphone so that the people who are watching this can just know who you are?
My name is Jillian Tomaselli from Stevens and Associates. It's about 13 feet.
Yep. She's the architect.
And the road, Route 5 there
Oh,
is
yes.
10 feet below the buildings?
I think that's what I had noted before, wasn't it? So,
Looks better.
95.
It's hard for me to tell with the ditch
So this is
on a
501
topographic.
Yeah, I
right
know.
here.
It's hard for me to visualize it.
This is weird.
I only go there.
500.
It hurts.
No, actually, it's not as much as I thought. It's a deep ditch, but that's 95 right there, and that's 501. And at the road, it's basically 96. So it's 4 to 5 feet in height at that location.
Okay.
The ditch actually makes it look a lot deeper.
Right. Okay. I mean, basically from the road, the building is going to obscure that wall,
A lot of
except
it.
as you're looking at it, you know.
And the existing vegetation and the proposed vegetation is going to do that as well. I mean, the landscaping that we have proposed is an evergreen landscaping hedge. The idea was that we were trying to knock down the noise for the living space in the courtyard, but it creates a visual break as well.
Would it be possible to put something large and bushy like an arborvitae
At the end, at
At the
least.
end.
Yeah, absolutely.
so that if you're walking by, it doesn't,
Yep.
it's a little less imposing back there?
Yep.
Or what is it, the shade master?
Shade mat. That's a locust. Yeah. But yeah, an arborvitae would work. You want something. I think you want something that's going to be evergreen.
Right, yeah, right, smart. So I mean, if people are in agreement on the variance, we can warn that meeting. That's not a binding decision because we haven't warned it.
Yeah.
We would just be
Okay.
saying, yes, we're going to have this meeting fairly promptly and have that discussion. And if we're all in agreement as to this being an accessory structure and thus not being bound by the height minimum, then I think the other conditions, fire department approval, landscape approval by the zoning administrator, electric charging station, soft white LED lighting, and our finding that the parking lot doesn't need the island, or what is it called, a peninsula, because it's not a long row. If we make the motion with those conditions, I think we've got the other stuff covered, if we all agree. I've not asked for public comment. I know you didn't even want to be sworn in, but now you're sworn in. Do you want to have any comment on any of this? Okay. Mr. Shaw, do you want to be on BCTV?
I'm I'm just wondering if in the next month, perhaps work with the motel and see if those can't get buried. They can't like the wall there either.
We're
Well,
continuing.
they're suspicious.
Oh, yeah, so I've had conversations with the owner already, you know, and I said we needed to build a wall. It's this wall is a pretty, you know, not well-known regulation unless you've dealt with housing and urban development before. So, you know, their idea was, oh, we'll throw up some Jersey barriers or, you know, a small concrete wall or something, and, you know, not understanding that HUD has a very specific and onerous regulation. It's pretty intense.
So now, what we could do now is we could have a condition saying if they bury the tanks, fine.
Yeah.
I don't think we actually even need that condition because it's just that's the situation. If they bury the tanks, fine. We can warn the meeting for the variance for the wall, and ideally before that meeting, if you know you don't need the wall, tell Brian and we won't have the meeting.
Right.
If it turns out that you can't negotiate with your abutter to bury the tanks, then we've got to have that, and it may as well.
Yeah.
It makes sense to warn it now since it has to happen that way. And that way, if you do need the variance, the meeting will be scheduled and it won't unduly delay the project or our decision on the wall.
Right.
I would agree.
Yeah, I would agree too. And you know, as I was saying, we are actively talking with the owner about potential solutions other than the wall, which would be burying the tanks.
We have been. We've been working with them for like a month and a half, 2 months now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, by the time we actually got a hold of them, it was, you know, about a month. And like I said, they're very interested in the project, so, you know, they're willing to work with us. We just want to make sure they have all the information of what this wall would actually be. So.
Okay. So if everybody's okay with the conditions I enumerated before, did you get all those down?
Yeah.
We can have a motion here. The motion's going to be silent on the wall, and we're going to kick the can on that until the variance meeting. And then, because we've had landscaping as approved by the zoning administrator, I think that would apply to the wall if we grant the variance down the road. I don't want to have another meeting about solely the landscaping of the wall, and I think everybody here understands what we're thinking. Does the board agree?
I do.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I'm guessing you guys don't want to continue to get our sixth person here or have them review the record. You're okay with us voting with a short board?
Sounds it. Yeah.
Okay, so let's have a motion with the conditions that I discussed 2 minutes ago that I don't want to try to repeat.
So
And
moved.
So moved.
Yes.
Okay, second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks for doing this. I think it's a really good project.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Did you say you've got the stuff for me to sign, Brian?
Yes, sir.
So a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn. Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0.